Shalom, everyone. This is Rabbi Stuart Darman from Interfaithfulness, where we're building bridges where history builds walls. And today, we want to look at a really controversial subject: Paul, masks, and vaccinations. Could hardly pick something more controversial, to tell you the truth. It comes out of a question that was asked in Shulchan Shalanu this week. Shulchan Shalanu is our weekly Shabbat home discussion guide. And one of the things we have in Shulchan Shalanu is an advice column called Dear Rabbi. And someone named George wrote in to Dear Rabbi and asked this question. Dear Rabbi, I live in an area where a lot of people are getting upset about COVID vaccinations. They claim their rights are being violated. I know this is a strange question, but does the Bible have anything to say to this? And I just want to share with you Rabbi's answer to this, and imagine you're discussing this around your Shabbat table with your family. Paul followed a principle we rarely see among believers today. That principle was a willingness to forgo one's rights if it would benefit someone else. That's not something we see a lot of nowadays. We see a lot of insisting on our rights, protecting our rights, but foregoing our rights is not exactly popular. Second paragraph. This principle of Paul's shows up in chapter 8 of his first letter to the Corinthians in a discussion about believers eating meat which had been offered to idols. This meat was less expensive, and many believers would prefer to buy it, reasoning that meat is meat. Nothing had really happened to the meat just because it had been presented before an idol. But suppose there was another believer who felt that the meat was spiritually contaminated through that process, and for whom eating such meat would be a sin. And by your eating the meat, you're saying, come on, it's only meat. And they go along, maybe they respect you, and they go along with it, but it wounds their conscience. Paul said, rather than wound that person's conscience, he would forgo the freedom to eat meat. And he says this: if food causes my brother or sister to sin, I will never eat meat again, so that I may not cause one of them to sin. That's extraordinary. He's prepared to give up a basic right of his if by insisting on that right, he might be wounding another brother or sister. That's Paul's principle. He reinforces it in chapter 9. In chapter 9, he applies the principle again. He says in 1 Corinthians 9, am I not a free man? Yes, he is. He's a free Roman citizen, not a slave. He's got clout. Am I not an emissary of the Messiah? Again, yes. Haven't I seen Yeshua, our Lord? Yes. And aren't you yourselves the result of my work for the Lord? Yes. All of this gives him rights. He says, don't we have the right to be given food and drink? Of course he does. Don't we have the right to take along with us a believing wife? A believing wife, like he goes on to say, as do the other emissaries. Also, the Lord's brothers and Kepha. Yes, he has a right. Or are Barnabas, and I the only ones required to go on working for a living? Paul says, that's what we do. I make tents, hard leather tents. I work for a living. Are we the only ones that have to work for a living? The answer is no. He says, if others are sharing in this right to be supported by you, don't we have a greater claim to it? Again, the answer is yes. But we don't make use of this right. This is extraordinary. We don't make use of this right. Rather, we put up with all kinds of things so as not to impede in any way the good news about the Messiah. So clearly, Paul was prepared to forego insisting on his rights if by doing so he advanced the gospel or benefited others. It was a major principle of his life. So, in a climate where people are clamoring about exercising and protecting their rights, and where many believers insist on their right not to mask up, or to be vaccinated, I think we should at least be asking this question that Paul asks: what rights am I willing to forego for the benefit of other people? It's a great question, but I don't count on too many people asking it. I really don't. So, I want to leave you with something before you go. I want to leave you with the opportunity to subscribe to Shulchan Shalanu, which has a section about the Torah reading of the week, a section about Jewish life, a section about growing in relationship with God, a section about halacha, a section about the New Covenant reading. And all of this is geared to provoking vigorous discussion at your Shabbat table. So here is how you can get Shulchan Shalanu. Visit www.interfaithfulness.org/Shulchan. Once more, www.interfaithfulness.org/Shulchan. If you will visit there, you can even get a free copy of Shulchan Shalanu, and you can subscribe like other people do. But for now, I'm going to say Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for being with us here at Interfaithfulness, where we're building bridges, where history builds walls. Thank you for joining with us, building bridges where history